So that was an amazing conversation with Bhavik about his entrepreneurial journey and his personal story of getting to the point of where he is and how he started building GetVantage. Having said that, let's move on to the next part of the story, Dhandhe Ki Baat. What does GetVantage exactly do? What exactly is the business all about, and how does Bhavik see the ecosystem moving forward? We also will kind of deep dive a bit into fundraising and try to explain it to he'll try to explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. So let's get into that. Hey Bhavik, super excited to have you here again. Before we deep dive into fundraising and various aspects, let's talk about the origin of the name GetVantage.
Isn't it about giving an unfair advantage to every aspiring entrepreneur out there? And so truly, that's where the word GetVantage comes from. Is how can we give that unfair advantage back into the hands of every aspiring entrepreneur and founder building an emerging brand, emerging business?
Right, perfect. No, that is superb. So let's get into it. How do you kind of give that unfair advantage to the founders? What exactly do you do? What is it all about?
I think one of the first most important things in any journey, building something new for a business, starts from access to capital, right?
Right.
And so everybody asked me, can you talk about GetVantage and what it does in one sentence? And I say, actually, khali do words bhi kafi hai, right? We truly are not only India's, but one of the world's first capital gateways, right? And this is about being able to provide all forms of capital to a business, all forms of alternative financing and funding to a business and a founder that can help them get to their next stage of growth. And while we provide capital, can we go beyond capital? That unfair advantage really comes from saying, can I provide capital plus some intelligence, support, and efficiency to that business, right?
Right.
And hence, as a platform, can we help with some amount of marketing insights, some amount of support with better access to different vendor ecosystems, better networking and connect to collaborate with other players, right? And I think all of those become those interesting pillars to ultimately get a business from X to 2X and 3X revenue. What is that next milestone that it needs to get?
Perfect. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? So, capital gateway, what exactly is this? And before we kind of get into that, why did you choose this industry or this domain to work into? Like, what was the problem statement that you discovered and how did you discover it?
Your honest hand to heart, no eureka moment. Ye nahi tha ki, one day in the morning you wake up and say, aha, ye karte hai, right? Or just because it's the most lucrative space or is this most trending, should we jump into it? I think the origination of all of this, and I truly personally believe, कि यार अगर ये journey of entrepreneurship or anything new you want to build, you have to be truly attached, associated to the problem that gives you purpose to solve.
Right.
So this came from my own challenges as an operator, as a founder, building businesses. And as we saw that the way businesses have to grow around us is changing. Everything is built more digitally. Businesses are being built more digitally and more asset-light. But funnily, access to capital is still in the most traditional ways, or very physical or human dependent with human biases, or at the same time, we're still looking at collaterals or physical assets from a business. So my own challenge is, yaar, hum it's cash bana rahe the, asset light business, payments business, we are flowing billions and billions of dollars annually as payment volume, high revenue generating. Yet when we wanted some short working capital, growth capital, right?
Right.
The same banking partners or traditional financial institutions will ask me for a piece of land. Fundamentally, businesses have to be built differently. It's not the old traditional way where you start from day zero with profit, right? You're investing in growth sometimes. So you might not necessarily be profit generating from day one. Right?
Got it.
Yeah, nothing. It's just your personal hardships is so difficult. Yeah, I told you, an emerging country, an emerging market, it needs a lot of capital to have an economy get from a 3 trillion economy to a 5 trillion, right? And especially, we are a small business economy, right? Our backbone as an economy is very deeply rooted in its growth of its small businesses. Now, you call it startups, you call it emerging brands, you call it small businesses, but ultimately, if you fuel growth there, you're going to see a huge expansion happen across consumption, across consumer uptake as well. Personally, those challenges thi, I needed sometimes more money for seasonal, October, November, December season time. You needed a little up your ante on marketing, and I would have to fight with my CFO saying, cash flow nahi hai, we're not able to fuel the growth, right? So, I think from different requirements at different phases of a journey, to understanding that ultimately, if I had anything, and as I strongly believe my core strength is as a fintech guy, right? And we've seen the second big eureka moment was we've seen that everything around us, right? Technology has shaped the way of how markets, industries, and businesses are growing.
Right.
But fundraising and financing hasn't gone tech driven. Commerce went e-commerce and digital. Payments went e and digital.
True.
But financing is still not gone digital. And so here is where truly what I believe is tech has to enable the future of finance.
Got it. Bilkul. So that makes a lot of sense. And let's take this one step forward, right? Let's kind of get into a little bit of a road place, I should say it. I'm a early stage founder. I don't want to dilute too much of equity because of whatever reason. I've heard a lot of gyan saying कि equity इतनी जल्दी देनी नहीं चाहिए. So that is a notion that is in my head. And I come to GetVantage. How do I, kind of experience the journey? What will the journey be like?
So the beautiful part is if you really talk about a startup founder, the entire journey, he's building a digital and new age business. You are trying to set up something new and digital. And so even your fundraising experience should be as digital as possible.
The first.
Right? So right from just coming in and starting your quick application online to then simply connecting all the various platforms you use, right from your payment gateways, your bank accounts, if you're running a store online, your Shopify store, all of these are digital platforms that you are using as a business, right?
True.
Why do you have to still share data in the traditional way? Why can't we really use a more tech-driven way of being able to just have a founder click, connect all its different platforms to be able to share its data, to be able to share real-time how his business is performing,
right?
And truly based on that performance and matrix, be able to get an approval of saying what quantum, what tenure, what do you need money for, right? And how do we make the disbursement also that much more digital? And most importantly, if I'm doing everything that is more digital, and you as a business today are probably collecting all your revenues as much digitally as well, right? I think what has India done for the world is really provided 2-3 inflection moments, right? We had demonetization, which changed at least consumer behavior of wanting to spend more digitally. And of course, the UPI, right, made digital payments that much more. So today, businesses are getting the revenues digitally. Yes. So even my repayments, right, or my return of capital, can that not be done digitally?
True.
Through those digital revenue streams I'm coming in. So in a nutshell, what we truly believe is it's just tech-driven financing. It's while we are part of fintech, I really try to drive and say that the entire journey and experience should be more tech-fit for any startup founder, any business, and why only a founder that wants to raise equity. Look, small businesses in India will always be bootstrapped and will be building just pure revenue generating businesses. Don't ever need to think of dilution, exit, and valuation.
True.
Right? But can these emerging businesses, small businesses also be able to access working capital, seasonal capital, money for inventory, money for marketing spends? And can that process be as frictionless, as digital, and as founder friendly? And that truly is what is the differentiation GetVantage brings to the table, from the entire journey being as much more digital and truly being a capital gateway, and saying, yeah, you need capital for a quick 3-4 months, you need capital for 12-18 months, you need revenue-based financing, you need cash flow-based funding, you need working capital lines, just being able to access all these different forms for different use cases of your business.
Got it. Perfect. So let's take a step back, right? You said a lot of terms that आधे समझ में आए, मुझे आधे नहीं है. Call it my ignorance. Revenue-based financing, equity financing is the most mainstream financing जो हम Shark Tank देख के सीख गए हैं सब. उसके अलावा जो बाकी अलग-अलग working capital financing is something that I heard a lot from the banker's mouth. When I was a part of the bank earlier, we used to do that. But यार ये startup ecosystem में कैसे fit होता है? Let's talk about fundraising, right? Explain all of these to me like I'm a 5-year-old. What is fundraising and what comes in?
So as a 5-year-old, you would want to have all types of toys to play with. Of course, right? It's the same way as a businessman, as a startup founder, or anyone setting up and scaling a business. Yeah, you also need money for all different forms of your growth. So, सबसे पहले तो if we understand this simply, then every business needs different things to grow its business. And so for those different things, you need different forms of capital.
True.
Right? अगर आप product company हो, आपको inventory के लिए inventory करना है, फिर आपको marketing spends करना है, आपको distribution करना है. So you have different use cases. You want to pay salaries, you want to do product development, you want to do R&D. Once we understand, ये बहुत simple एक, and not only 5-year-old, I see a lot of founders out there who have been at it and still have this very mythical way or simpler way of saying money has no color. All money is one form of money. Right. All your forms of business needs different forms of growth and different forms of money. And so अगर आपने ये एक चीज समझ ली ना, तो आप ये समझ जाओगे कि यार for certain things that are more experimental in nature, and when you're a very early stage pre-revenue, yes, you might take some equity money. Now this much comes from institutions or friends and families. We all borrow some money, right, to get started, right? And you do your product development. Then comes a phase where you've done a little bit. Now you want to quickly fuel growth, right? So inventory के लिए don't use the expensive capital, which is equity capital.
Right.
So very simply, to a 5-year-old or a 40-year-old founder, understanding कि हर business का एक different phase होता है, and for every phase of growth, you should understand that there can be different forms of capital also to keep you growing your business. So take this away, which is every founder needs to have a financial toolkit and a simple awareness that understand my business and understand what I need money for, and then raise different forms of money for those different areas.
Got it.
So let's founder's financial toolkit, just the most simplest thing that every founder should start making it part of their DNA and their business.
Understood. So let's kind of break it down a bit as well, right? I'm a founder and essentially of a, let's say, SaaS company, right? And I'm about to sign a contract for a year, or maybe I'm applying for an RFP that will essentially give me 2 years worth of revenue, and I know that I can fulfill it if I have, let's say, a team that I as of now don't have, and I need the capital to fund that team and a few other things. So what kind of capital should I get in that scenario, right? What would you suggest essentially?
Super. So let's take SaaS businesses or services businesses as well, right? Subscription businesses.
Right.
And if you just look at quickly your cost items or your P&L,
right?
I've got a contract, I'm going to get X number of users from this enterprise client. But really, one of the raw material that you need in a SaaS business or a tech platform is probably infrastructure and cloud hosting capacity.
Of course.
Right? You're onboarding 2,000 new users. So you need to increase your cloud hosting bills will go up right today.
True.
But you will get recurring revenue on that per user over the next 12, 18 months.
Right.
So really what you need is a capital advance. You just need capital today to take care of your infrastructure costs. But you know that there is going to be recurring revenue over the next 12, 18 months that will take care of that cost today.
God.
And that's where capital advance, revenue-based financing and model comes in.
Right. And as of now, if I'm not wrong, ये जो working capital वाला जो फंडा है or the capital advance, you were not, as a founder, you were not able to get it from banks that easily, right? I mean, a lot of these existing, I would say, lending entities were not keen kind of to get into these kind of arrangements. Maybe underwriting issues or whatever they had. So what are your views on that? Like, why do you think that is happening still?
No, it's simply said, if businesses change the way they operate, right, you also have to change the way you will evaluate that business.
True.
Right? So, 20 years ago, the way you would set up a business is factory kharido, machinery kharido, manufacturing kharido. That was that time of how you set up the business. So, businesses were evaluated with the collateral they needed. They needed equipment finance, right? Or machinery financing. They had that. But today, as you're building a lot more digital and asset-like businesses, what is the new asset of these businesses? It's their data and it's their ability to be digital and real-time. So really what we have to do is, and that's what I simply said, right? If you take my 15, 20 years of experience, what I have seen is the last decade, emerging markets like India, we saw commerce going digital, right? Amazon, Flipkart, commerce went e-commerce, right? All your ticket booking, make my trip, right? All your commerce transactions went digital.
True.
2016 demonetization, and what you saw is finally payments went digital.
Right.
And that's where you saw a huge consumer inflection happen, right? Customers now start understanding I can pay digitally as well. So if commerce has gone digital, payments, money has gone digital, finance should also go digital first. So I think it is the ability to be able to connect into these new digital data points and then basis that data point, actually evaluate a business.
Right.
As a capital gateway, what we truly believe is payment gateways are a great source to give me a very clear view of the last 12, 18 months of how a business's daily revenues are. Right?
True.
And why don't we use that as a way to really evaluate the cash flows of the business?
Got it.
And then comes the part that if you've evaluated them differently, if you can make sure that even their repayments are that much more aligned to their cash flows and their revenue. And not only that, can you do a lot more live monitoring?
Right.
So if you ask me, one thing that we've truly pioneered in India is, as GetVantage, we've not only showcased that alternative financing and lending should be done on new data points live from source, real-time data points, and your repayments come from that. But the most important is we say the new collateral. Gone are the days of physical collateral. The new collateral is live monitoring of a business, right? I can literally plug in through an API and evaluate and continue to monitor the health of your business on a more real-time basis. And isn't that a great way to de-risk? And I think that's what we are bringing as a platform, as a fintech platform. We are being able to marry, right, these new age businesses, how they need to be looked at, what is the lens that they need to be looked at with, but bridging the gap with traditional pools of capital and being able to create this visibility to them and being able to connect this traditional lenders with the new age businesses.
Indeed. I think that is something that is really important. Even if you look at any kind of capital, right? If you are able to monitor this data live, that is what brings the next level of confidence, right? Because the lack of collateral in asset light or fully digital companies, there are no essentially assets to give as a collateral, right? And given the fact that any kind of traditional lenders would kind of stay away from a place where they are not able to get their hands on asset, because that is how they are programmed to think, right? That is how the business works. So this kind of monitoring essentially could open up a new appetite and completely new pools of capital for the startups that earlier wasn't there, right? And I think this is definitely something super exciting.
यही तो हमारा value add होना चाहिए, right? As tech players, what you truly believe, and I strongly believe, that financial services a very serious business of ensuring that you de-risk the model as much as possible. Right. Here, can we use data and tech to just add the de-risk in the whole system? And that's the value we want to be able to find here and bring to the table.
No, I think, and also what happens even if you look at the traditional equity scenario, and even have, I'm pretty sure you have observed it a lot of places. So I've been in that industry a bit. So what I've also observed in a lot of places is that the sanctity of data is always doubtful. जो data आपके पास हर quarter end पे या after क्या बोलते हैं provisional financials जो आते हैं, what is the actual sanctity of that? What is the actual sanctity of the orders that you have booked? How are you going to verify all of that, right? But if you have a digital monitoring system that you are able to kind of trust because of the real-time data that's coming in, that actually gives me a lot more confidence. And for the founders, I think you would be the right person to explain कि उसका और impact क्या होगा even in these kind of scenarios, like for a founder on the other hand.
Founders and investors building confidence on both sides, right?
Exactly.
You rightly said, why only in quasi-equity, even in equity investment, right?
True.
You know, it's and that's why we say this, that we are just getting started, right? As GetVantage, we are just on day one of what we are trying to build for. The real passion is there are all forms of funding and financing, right? Even look at private equity and venture capital, right? They've over the last 30-40 years been investing in businesses that are cutting edge in technology, but that industry, they themselves are still doing it the traditional human way with human bias, right?
True.
So shouldn't there be a tech intervention on all forms of capital? Not only, like you said, to be able to better evaluate. You know, those MISs, those provisionals, we all know Excel sheets can be made up and cooked up, right?
Bilkul.
And why wait for end of a quarter or end of a year to get data on a business or understand where it's what's happening?
True.
If I can give you a far more real time, right? I think that's going to take away so much risk from the ecosystem. And this is what I tell founders: don't shy away from showcasing your real asset. If you're truly building a good business, share your data in real time. It only gives more confidence to all types of investors and financiers to give you more capital. And then what you're changing is you're taking away human bias from the entire ecosystem, and everything is very performance based, right?
Of course.
It's based on your performance. If you're doing well, you will do better. And if you convince the investors that there's no guesswork required, you know, there's a lot of this talk around corporate governance coming up, right? And all of that is because there's so much layering that's happening. If you can really make all of this real time, even, you know, funding and financing has innate risks. But if you can even catch risk early, right? Nobody is worried about losses sometimes. It's more about saying, what am I able to at least catch a risk? Or if there is going to be a loss, I know a little more in time to be able to take some action.
No, definitely.
That's the real the play, right? And I think why only India? We, you know, globally we're just getting started on something like this, and truly the future of finance is going to be in the hands of how much we are able to do real time, true data and evaluations.
No, it definitely makes sense. One question that's been kind of lingering in my mind since we spoke about the quasi-equity financing as such. What is a good rule of thumb for a founders on which type of funding mechanism or funding pool to pick in which situation, right? Whether traditional equity or alternate funding, quasi-equity, when he should pick up what?
So Shreya, सबसे पहले तो मैं आपको and to all the listeners, all aspiring founders, I'm going to request one thing. Go and just Google search. The most simple, basic thing that a kid would also do, right? Go Google search and write what are the types of fundraising. Sabse pehle to yaar, let's bust this myth that funding and investment is only equity driven.
True.
You actually type this in Google and you get the answer. The two types of fundraising or funding are equity and quasi-equity. Right? Because it's so important to remember that all types of capital you raise has to be returned. There's no free lunches. There's become this slight underbelly across founders that are equity paisa raise karte raho. There is no risk. You don't have to really repay, right? No, not really. So every type of capital and investing or financing and funding has different forms. And so, yes, there is equity. You can part with equity when you need a lot of experimental capital. You're trying something new. You're building something early days. Take that form of capital, right? But then there are quasi-equity forms of capital where you're not basically giving back or return, sharing equity in the business, but there is a different structure. There is a different timeline, a different horizon of repayment, right? And within quasi-equity, there are so many multiple forms. So the second myth I want to bust is, quasi-equity does not mean debt. See, somehow over the years, we have associated a negative notion with the word debt. वो लेते हैं debt लेते तो ऐसा लगता है यार, how will we repay? Debt ले लिया, we'll be debt burdened.
True.
Debt also comes in different forms. There can be a 3-5 year long-term debt or a very large capital that you take, right? But there is different forms of capital advances, shorter forms of working capital, revenue-based financing. These are just something that you take as a short-term borrowing, a short-term capital advance, and let your business as it grows in a disciplined manner repay.
Got it.
Right? So, ek baar to, if we've understood that there is equity and quasi-equity, and within quasi-equity, there are different forms of structured finance, different forms of capital I can raise and I have to repay based on different parameters. I think you start becoming a far more confident founder and saying, in this traditional myths, yaar, wo 4 saal ka, 3 saal ka debt le liya, I want to let my business be debt free. Once you've taken equity money, that's also debt. You have to return.
Of course.
Right? So, I'm a big proponent, and this didn't come to me overnight either. Right? But here I'm a big proponent of saying every business should absolutely explore, and as you do your business planning, right? Look at for rent, fixed expenses. Yes, I might need some sort of longer term capital or equity capital. For direct expenses that fuel my revenue, I should have different kind of capital. And if you can orchestrate that well, you'll build a far more sustainable business, and you take away that question that you kept asking. And as a founder, do I need to dilute or not dilute?
Right.
It's not about that. Just be smart of what you're taking capital for, how you take that form of capital, and you take away from this whole notion of saying, did I dilute or not? You're just building value in your business. You're getting to your next stage of growth, and everything will fall in place.
Perfect. No, I think this puts a lot of it into perspective, and thanks for debunking a lot of myths over there as well. I think that definitely puts things into perspective as such. Having said that, right? I mean, you've been building GetVantage for almost 5 years now. So, what kind of reactions or
Three.
We
just crossed the 3.5 year mark.
Oh,
like I said, we've just crossed that 1,000 days.
Yes. So I think now it's all you see the light and you understand like ye kaise chalne wala and all of that. So that's all in place. But I think you have also interacted with a lot of founders during these 3 years.
Yes.
So what has the journey been like in that case? When what kind of unique stories or unique anecdotes that you came across while talking to these founders? What were their reactions when they kind of heard about it, and how was the uptake as such of this?
When you're building a new category, trust me, even your customers don't know that they need it, and it stays true for everything, right? So honestly, the first 6-8 months, a year actually went in building awareness, because nobody knew this was available.
True.
And founders didn't think that they wanted it. And all those myths, right, or those negative connotations, "Arey, ye to debt hai, arey, I don't need loan, I don't need," to then just being able to build or make them have the confidence of trying it once, right? And just like anything new, once that every founder has tried a round of capital advance, tried a round of growth capital from GetVantage, they've understood that this becomes a great on-tap capital partner, right? I don't need to take a large amount of debt and sit on it, right? I need money today for the next 3-6 months. I need a different form of capital. I'm getting into my season. I'm getting into my next equity raise, and I need a bridge till there, right? So I've heard everything from some founders understanding the model and saying, "This is too good to be true. What's the catch?" Right? So many of them say, "Kuch to, there's some catch in this. It's so frictionless," right? Some of them saying, what was great was, this is the only form of capital I realized that in a disciplined play, I repaid, and I didn't even realize I had to do. Because what we've taken away is that whole concept of once a month EMI.
Okay.
The other preconceived notion everyone has is, "Yeah, I want to pay only once a month." "Arey boss, but you don't get your revenues once a month." No.
True.
In fact, the bigger pressure is when you have to pay a big EMI or a repayment, rent and payroll, all three on one time of the month. That's when you fight and have a cash flow problem.
Of course.
Right? So I think from all of those preconceived notions that we've been able to cut through, we are happy to have shared or can share stories of around 450, 500 brands, founders across 18 different categories, from e-commerce, D2C to clean tech, EV, B2B SaaS businesses across the spectrum, right? Every business has started understanding that here I have access to another form of capital. And I think the most heartwarming stories are coming from, first-time young founders from tier 2 towns and cities who don't have access to the angel ecosystem, VC ecosystem. They don't know who's who to be able to scale their business, but they are doing it far more profitably. We back businesses and founders from Raipur, right? And for them, you will be surprised, Chess, that what magic that they can create even with 30, 40 lakhs of a capital advance of a fueling, right? To then businesses who took capital from us when they were at a seed stage, and today they are a Series B company and they are still taking, because we've been able to grow from giving them 20 lakhs to today being able to give them 20 crores, right? In terms of non-dilutive capital. And I think, when you see these great case studies or founders really turning around and saying, I didn't think this could work, but this has turned out to be my greatest fuel for growth. Founders saying that for us to have not known how to build a brand from a small town or scale a business from a small town, we didn't have resources, being able to get access to capital. And so I think the word I try to say is, if we can make it an even playing field with technology, give access to capital, democratize access to capital for everyone and all, truly based on their business performance. So these are the stories that keep me sane every day. This is, I think, through all the highs and the lows, I truly love working with founders. I truly love working with entrepreneurs trying to build something. And I think this gives me a little bit purpose, that am I being able to be a small part of their journey, right?
This is what I not fuel.
Yeah, so the North Star, people keep asking us what's the North Star for GetVantage. And I think, abhi to humne khali 500 founders and brands ki journey ko support kiya hai. Can we do that to 5,000, and can we do that to 50,000 and lakhs of founders over the next few years?
Awesome. I think this sounds super exciting, and hopefully more and more people eventually kind of understand, first of all, the difference and the value of the non-dilutive capital as such, right? I think that would be really a time to see. Having said that, right, how do you see these kind of funds seeping into startup ecosystem create an impact at the last mile level. The way we end up, for example, a D2C brand, right? So how do you think this would affect the customer of that D2C brand? Do you see a direct correlation there in that case, or in any other scenario where you are funding a customer-facing startup?
I think in every sense of the way, first and foremost, vocal for local, right? I think to emerging economies like us, it's time for really young brands and small businesses to really fuel this growth of India over the next 10 years. Right?
Indeed.
My last mile impact not only starts from the end consumers, but first from inspiring so many to jump into entrepreneurship and build a small brand for themselves, right? Whether it's a small husband and wife couple starting a pet care brand literally from their kitchen tables because they're passionate about it, right?
True.
Or to so many like you, Shreyas, to be able to also be creators, and can we fuel this creator economy, right?
True.
We're going big with creator financing as a category as well. And I think there is enough and a new emerging story for everybody to be their own small businessman and follow their passion and start something small. And if in that inevitably we are fueling that we all as consumers start consuming a lot more local and Indian brands and Indian products, right? I think that's the impact I truly want to be seen. What we really say is we are supercharging all these brands and services to be able to offer better products, quicker, with better service experience, so they can play at a level playing field with all the international brands, right? So if an Indian consumer gets the same service, product, quality and distribution from a local brand that it gets from its global counterpart, I think that's when we'll be able to create impact to the last mile and to the most small towns and cities across the country.
No, indeed, I think this is something really beautiful, right? I mean, in the past 2 years, if you've seen a lot of small brands, especially D2C brands during COVID, suffer a lot, mainly because they were so purely dependent on one capital pool and had just completely shut off because of a knee-jerk panic reaction. I mean, obviously it was justified to some extent, but that affected these guys because inventory pada hua hai, या फिर order पड़े हुए inventory नहीं आ रहा है, inventory perish हो गया, whatever the scenarios were. Ultimately, the bigger brands or the global brands kind of sailed through, but a lot of these brands shut off. In these cases, and even now, if you see, the higher the visibility, the more the cash burn is required. And in this case, if it is sourced from a sustainable capital source, then essentially they would be able to kind of build that or grow that exponentially over a period of time without kind of running out of a limited equity resource that they have. And that kind of probably will give them a lot more level playing field, as you said, right?
And not only D2C brands, that was more visible a change.
Of course.
But I can tell you about 60% of our portfolio is non-product or service-related businesses, right? So not only, talk about India being the SaaS hub for the world, right? We are providing software to the world.
True.
And all we really our founders really needed was that little bit of more cloud hosting costs or being able to market in the global markets by doing a little more digital marketing spend. Right? And that's where they saw GetVantage as this great partner to be able to keep fueling all of that quiet growth. And so not only for entrepreneurs, but like I mentioned again, we have so many stories of solopreneurs. People truly just jumping in saying, I want to follow a passion. I know that you started this podcast through the COVID times. It's something that you wanted to fuel your personal passion with. And I think being able to allow all to follow their path and journey by giving them that slightly unfair advantage.
Of course. Of course.
Is what our mission and passion is.
Perfect. True. Having said that, right, let's come to the final kind of question for this specific segment as such. How do you see this industry, given now that if it has access to sustainable, non-dilutive capital for the next 5 years, how do you see the ecosystem evolving differently? Specifically, I mean the startup ecosystem as such.
I think you will see a lot more maturity from founders first in starting to recalibrate and build businesses from the first principles perspective.
True.
Trying to refocus on fundamentals, right? And these could be a range of different fundamentals. You will see people refocusing and making sure that, at least revenue growth is a good barometer to go after. I'm not saying jump into thinking about profitability from day one, etc., but at least making sure that your businesses have some revenue generation and your operating margin positive, right?
Right.
The second piece, I think the depth and evolution of the startup ecosystem will go beyond this mad rush behind just raising a lot of venture capital money and celebrating only fundraising, right?
True.
To then people really saying, look, I can just build a small brand, an emerging brand out of my own passion, right? And it's not necessarily every startup. And I say this with a lot of conviction and even modesty, that not every startup should have to go down the path of saying valuation, exit, growth at all costs, right? But we could actually see hundreds and thousands of young brands and businesses. And this is no different from many years ago, right? Small businesses in India was about the family setting up a small shop in the neighborhood bazaar, right?
Right.
Now you're going to set up that business or brand a little more digitally and online, right?
Of course.
So I think what this is going to do is truly get a lot more different ways of how businesses are being built than just one way, right?
True.
Go raise money, increase valuation, find exit, right? I think there can be a lot more happening around that. And I think not only with India having the largest demand over the next 10 years, we are going to be a market that's going to have the largest consumption, local consumption. And so I think that's where we are all anticipating a 3 trillion to a 5 trillion economy. But I think what's going to subtly happen is you're going to see a very, very active and buzzing IPO market in the country, the SME IPO. You're going to see a buzzing amount. Look, we are still in public markets, we are still very nascent.
True.
All the brands that are publicly listed or industry that are publicly listed, they're not all products that we daily use, right? You're going to see a lot more small businesses grow and evolve into being nice, sustainable brands. They could be, again, entering in through the SME IPO before they get into the main market, etc. And I think that's what you're going to start seeing, that all forms of capital are going to fuel and back this growth journey.
Interesting. No, I think that is really an exciting feature that I think I personally look forward to as well. Given the fact that as of now, as you rightly said, right, there's a mad rush just for the valuation game or the exit game as such, but that in some or the other places kind of we lose the sense of sustainability and sustainable growth, and it in the end affects it has obviously a lot of negative impacts as well. So these kind of an evolution over the next 5 years, if there is more access to a sustainable, more non-dilutive kind of a capital, would essentially give rise to businesses that think customer first and probably a lot more profitability first, and we would probably see a lot less layoffs. I mean, looking at a more last mile impact, because the moment they see the growth chart going down, they panic and start playing off. That will also happen less because there will be less investor pressure. Having said all of that, I think this has been a really insightful conversation, Bhavik. Thank you so much. Got to understand a lot, and I think I must say a lot of the myths have been debunked as well. Thank you so much for that.
Good. Happy to do that.
All right, Bhavik, it has been an amazing journey so far with you. We've learned a lot about what building a business is like, a bit more about your journey and different types of fundraising, financing, what a sustainable capital can do to the economy, and a lot more. Having said that, let's move on to the final round of this podcast, and one of my favorites as well, the rapid fire round. Also, do keep in mind,
I hope there's a hamper at the end of it.
there is a digital hamper. Yeah. No, there is not. Not yet. Once I probably pick up some sustainable capital, I'll probably send out some hampers. Yeah. So let's get ahead with it, right? First question right away. What's your favorite book?
A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Your favorite way to pass time which is not related to work?
I love spending some alone time with myself. It's my way of, it's not something fancy or meditation, but just being alone with myself gives me a lot more recalibration. So that's something that I do more in a routine sense. Otherwise, I'm a scuba diver.
Oh, wow.
I love being outdoors with nature and being as deep below as possible.
Interesting. How do you manage to kind of disconnect from work after you go home, or you don't disconnect at all?
It's difficult. It takes a daily routine. One small hack. I have a short drive back from home, and all I do is pump up some very large, nonsensical music, right? And that's a way to train my mind or trigger my mind that I'm leaving one, disconnecting from one, and going to the other.
Got it. So, what is your guilty pleasure?
Watching a lot of documentaries late at night. So I can really watch a lot of biographies and documentaries. That's my guilty pleasure, and
that's something we both have in common, I guess. I do that a lot at nights. I mean, I don't know, for some reason, late nights are the best time to watch documentary for me.
I think it's my escape sometimes, and I don't like. I don't like fiction as much as I like non-fiction.
Got it. What is one mistake as a founder that you have made that you kind of think? I mean, you feel that you could probably go back in time and could change if you could.
Not be one founder. Yeah, there are days when you question and say, "Kyun yaar? Kyun karne ki zarurat thi ye sab?" But no, amongst a lot of mistakes, I think one that I feel the most guilty about is sometimes when I am in a room with my loved ones and family, and yet not present. My mind is wandering and is somewhere else, thinking that's what I call the founder's curse.
True.
And I think that's a mistake I continue to keep making, honestly. And I think I don't like that. And I would want to keep training myself to not do that. Being present in the moment with, when I'm with my loved ones, when I'm with my family, it has to be just them and not somewhere else. Easier said than done.
Got it. Perfect. What is one piece of advice for the budding entrepreneurs around you?
I think there is a lot, but the only one is something that I have actually tattooed on my arm as well.
Oh, wow.
And it says one word, which is persistence.
Persistence.
I think the only advice I can give is that stick at it, stay at it, right? I actually have a contrary view to this concept of fail fast. We've popularized the concept of failing fast.
Sure.
And I said, no, stay at it. You have to keep being agile, iterate, keep changing, keep meandering, right? But stick at it. Because, as I teach my 5-year-old daughter, we talk about survival of the fittest, right? You have to survive, right?
True.
So be persistent, embrace being slow and steady. It's not about going fast or slow, right? Again, talking about, we've forgotten a lot of those basics that we learned as kids, right? The tortoise and the rabbit or the hare story, right?
Right.
It's about being consistent. It's about being persistent. Be there, and time will turn around. Even the highs don't stay. So why will the lows stay long enough?
Perfect. Makes sense. I think that's a really inspiring note on which I'd like to close this conversation. Thank you so much once again, Bhavik. It's been a pleasure having you here, and must say I've learned a lot. Thanks a lot once again.
Thank you so much. Pleasure. Pleasure was mine.